You know how people say life can get a bit monotonous? Well, let me tell you, they're not kidding. It's like you wake up one day, and bam, you're 33, with a decade of marriage under your belt and a couple of kids who are your world. But then, there's this gnawing feeling, like a tiny hole in your favorite sweater that keeps getting bigger. That's where my story starts. I'm not your typical protagonist with a dramatic life story. I'm just me, a regular woman, with a regular job, in a regular town. I work 9 to 5, pick up groceries, make dinner, help with homework, you get the drill. My husband? He's a good man, really. Works his butt off, but that's the problem, he's always working, especially in the evenings. Our schedules are like two ships passing in the night. We're together, but not really together, you know? The loneliness crept up on me slowly. It wasn't just missing my husband, it was missing something. Connection. Excitement, heck, even just adult conversation that wasn't about bills or what's for dinner. So, what do you do when you're lonely? Some people might read a book or binge watch shows. Me, I did something I never thought I'd do, I signed up for a dating site. Yeah, one of those sites, but for people like me, married and not looking to change that, just looking. I can almost hear you judging, but hold on. It wasn't like I dove into this headfirst. It was more like dipping a toe in the water. Curiosity, you know? I just wanted to see what was out there, what I was missing. And for a while, it was innocent. Just browsing profiles, seeing other people in the same boat. It was comforting, in a way. But then, he messaged me. Let's call him Mr. X. He was 27, married too, and just like me, he wasn't looking to upend his life. He just wanted more. Our chats were casual at first, I'd log on after the kids were in bed, and we'd talk about everything and nothing. Movies, music, our dreams, our frustrations. It was easy, you know? Like talking to an old friend. Then we exchanged numbers, texting turned into calls, and before I knew it, I was waiting for his messages, his calls. It was like a drug. I'd feel this rush every time my phone buzzed. We'd talk for hours, late into the night, when the house was quiet, and I felt more alone than ever. We had this connection, it was undeniable. We got each other in a way that felt both exciting and terrifying. The more we talked, the more I wanted to meet him. It was like a craving I couldn't ignore. We set rules, never leave our spouses, keep this our little secret, just two people finding some happiness in this crazy world. I know, it sounds cliché, but at that moment, it felt real, necessary even. So, we planned to meet. I was a bundle of nerves. What if he wasn't what I expected? What if I wasn't what he expected? I remember standing in front of my mirror, second-guessing my outfit, my hair, my everything. But when I finally saw him, it was like all those doubts just melted away. He was everything he seemed online and more. We met at this quiet little coffee shop downtown, the kind where you can sit in a corner and nobody pays you any mind. He walked in, and I swear, my heart skipped a beat. He had this easy smile, you know, the kind that makes you feel like you've known someone forever. And when we talked, it was like we'd been doing this for years. The conversation just flowed, no awkward pauses, no searching for what to say next. It was natural, comfortable, and thrilling all at once. As we sat there, sipping our coffees, I realized something. I wasn't just attracted to him physically, it was more than that. We connected on a level one hadn't experienced in years. He got my jokes, shared his dreams, and listened, really listened, to what I had to say. It's funny how you don't realize what you're missing until you find it again. But then reality hit me. I was a married woman, a mother, sitting across from another woman's husband, feeling things I hadn't felt in a long time. The guilt crept in, but so did the excitement. It was like being on a roller coaster, thrilling and terrifying all at once. We kept seeing each other after that first meeting, it was like we were in our little bubble when we were together. The world outside didn't matter. We'd meet whenever we could sneak away, always careful, always mindful of the lives we were leading outside of our secret rendezvous. Sexually, we were like two puzzle pieces that fit perfectly. It was passionate, intense, and liberating. I'd forgotten what it was like to be wanted in that way, to feel desire. He made me laugh, made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. But every time we said goodbye, a part of me felt sad, empty. It was like coming down from a high. Knowing you can't stay in that euphoria forever. I knew what we were doing was wrong. I'd never been unfaithful before, never even thought about it. But here I was, in the middle of an affair, with someone who wasn't my husband. I'd tell myself it was just physical, just a fling. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I was developing feelings for Mr. X, real, strong, scary feelings. So, there I was, caught in this whirlwind of emotion, trying to juggle my secret life with my real life. Every time I looked at my husband, I felt this pang of guilt. He hadn't changed, he was still the man I married. But I had changed, I was doing something I never thought I would, and it was tearing me up inside. But I couldn't stop, I was addicted to the way Mr. X made me feel, to the escape he provided from my everyday life. It was like I was living in two worlds, and I couldn't let go of either. So, there I was, deep in something I never saw coming. Funny how life throws you these curveballs, huh? One minute you're this married, responsible adult, and the next, you're sneaking around like a teenager. The thing with Mr. X wasn't just a one-off thing, it became our little escape from reality. Every chance we got, we'd meet. Sometimes it was just for coffee, other times, well, you know. It was like we were in our own little world when we were together. The conversation, the laughter, the sex, it was all so intense, so real. But with every meeting, the stakes got higher. We were playing with fire, and we both knew it. We had our rules, never leave our spouses, keep it secret, but rules don't stop feelings, do they? And boy, were there feelings. I'd find myself waiting for his texts, getting butterflies when his name popped up on my phone. And when we couldn't meet, I felt this ache, like something was missing. It's crazy how someone can become such a big part of your life so quickly. And then there was my husband. He was still there, still working hard, still the good guy the first married. But it was like I was living a double life. With him, I played the part of the loving wife, the caring mother. But when I was with Mr. X, I was someone else, someone more alive, more vibrant. I know it sounds awful, but it's the truth. The guilt was there, always lurking in the background. I'd look at my husband and kids and feel this pang in my heart. What was I doing? Why was I risking everything for this affair? But then I'd see Mr. X, and all those doubts would just vanish. It's like I was addicted to the way he made me feel, and I couldn't give that up. One night, we got close to getting caught. My husband almost read a text from Mr. X. My heart stopped, I swear. I managed to brush it off, make up some excuse, but it was a wake-up call. We had to be more careful. We couldn't let this thing we had ruin our lives. But careful or not, things were getting complicated. It wasn't just physical anymore. We were sharing parts of ourselves, our hopes, our fears. I found out Mr. X wasn't just some guy looking for a fling. He had his own set of problems, his own unhappy marriage. We were two lost souls finding comfort in each other. One day, he told me he was falling for me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Falling for me? What did that even mean in our situation? We were both married, both had lives and families. There was no future for us, no happy ending. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was real life, and in real life, things get messy. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me was terrified, this was getting too deep, too serious. But another part of me was thrilled. It meant something, didn't it, to have someone care about you that much? I started to look at my husband differently. We'd been together so long, it was like I stopped seeing him. But now, I started to really notice him. The way he'd play with the kids, the way he'd look at me across the dinner table. I realized I still cared about him, maybe even loved him. But it was different from what I felt for Mr. X. It was more comfortable, more familiar, less exciting. The affair continued, but the thrill was starting to fade, replaced by this constant fear of getting caught, this nagging guilt that wouldn't go away. Every time I lied to my husband, every time I snuck out to meet Mr. X, it weighed on me. I was stuck between two worlds, and it was exhausting. One evening, Mr. X and I had a talk. We knew this couldn't go on forever. We were risking too much, hurting too many people. But the thought of ending it, of never seeing him again, was unbearable. So, we made a decision. We'd continue seeing each other, but we'd be more careful, more mindful of the risks. We promised it would just be about us, about the connection we had. No future plans, no false hopes. Just two people finding some happiness in a messed up situation. But promises are easy to make and hard to keep. As the affair went on, the lines started to blur. What started as an escape from loneliness had turned into something complex, something dangerous. I was in deeper than I ever intended, and I didn't know how to get out. If you think affairs are all secret texts and steamy meetups, think again. It's like you're constantly on a tightrope, balancing what you want with what you're supposed to be. And let me tell you, it's exhausting. Mr. X and I, we were in deep. Every stolen moment we had was electric, but it was the moments in between that were killing me. You see, when you're juggling a secret like this, every little thing feels like a potential disaster. Take my husband, for example. He started noticing little changes, why wouldn't he? I was distracted, on edge. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. I could see the questions in his eyes, but he never asked. Not outright, anyway. Maybe he didn't want to know the answers. Maybe I was good at making excuses. Either way, it was this unspoken thing between us, a cloud hanging over our marriage. With Mr. X, it was different. We were in our bubble, a world where we didn't have to worry about responsibilities or consequences. But even that wasn't simple. The more time we spent together, the more I realized this wasn't just a fling. I was catching feelings, and that was dangerous. You don't dive into an affair expecting to fall for the other person. But there I was, falling, and hard. One night, it hit me. We were lying there, in some cheap hotel room, and he was talking about his life, his wife. And I thought, what are we doing? We're not just messing up our lives, we're messing up theirs too. It was like a slap in the face, a wake-up call. But did I end it there? No. I was too far gone. It wasn't just about the sex anymore. We'd talk for hours, about everything and nothing. He understood me in a way no one else did. And I think I did the same for him. It was like we were two pieces of the same puzzle, fitting together just right. But with every secret rendezvous, every lie I told, the guilt was building up. It was like this heavy weight I was carrying around all the time. I'd look at my kids, their innocent faces, and feel like the worst person in the world. They deserved a mother who was present, not one who was sneaking around, living a lie. And then there was this one day, this one moment that changed everything. I was at the grocery store, just doing my usual shopping, and I ran into someone I knew. She was asking about my family, how things were going, the usual small talk. But then she said something about how lucky I was, how my husband and I seemed to have the perfect marriage. It was like a punch to the gut, if only she knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything. My husband, my kids, Mr. X. What was I doing to all of us? This wasn't a game, it was our lives. And I was messing it all up. I started to pull away from Mr. X, but it wasn't easy. He could sense something was wrong, and we had this big, emotional confrontation. It was messy, full of tears and things we couldn't take back. He asked me what I wanted, and the truth was, I didn't know. I wanted him, but I also wanted my family. I wanted everything to be okay, but I knew it couldn't be. Not like this. Things with my husband were strained, too. It was like we were living together, but we weren't really together. We were like roommates, co-parenting and sharing a house, but not much else. The connection we used to have was gone, buried under layers of lies and secrets. So, there I was, stuck between two men, two lives. With Mr. X, I felt alive, desired, understood. But with my husband, there was history, a family, a life we'd built together. It was like I was at a crossroads, and I had no idea which way to go. The affair was at its height, but so was the turmoil. I was being torn in different directions, and I knew I couldn't keep it up. Something had to give, I had to make a choice, but the thought of choosing was terrifying. That's the thing about affairs. They start as this exciting escape from reality, but they quickly turn into a trap, one where every choice seems impossible, every step feels like a mistake. And I was right in the middle of it, trying to figure out how to fix the mess I'd made. Life's funny, you know. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, it throws a curveball that knocks you off your feet. And let me tell you, I was about to face one hell of a curveball. The affair with Mr. X was like a house of cards, fragile and ready to collapse at any moment. And collapse it did, in a way I never saw coming. It all started with this unexpected twist, something that changed everything. I was at work, just a regular day, you know? Then I get this call from Mr. X. He sounded off, like something was really wrong. Turns out, his wife had found out. Not about me, specifically, but she knew he was up to something. The way he talked, all panicked and desperate, it was like a bucket of cold water over my head. This wasn't a game, we were playing with people's lives, real lives. I remember hanging up and just sitting there, feeling like the worst person in the world. How did I get here? How did I become this person who lies, cheats, and hurts the people she loves? It was like I was waking up from a dream, a really bad one. Then came the confrontation with my lover. We met up, and it was tense, full of anger and accusations. He was scared, I was scared, and for the first time, we were truly honest with each other. We talked about ending it, about how we couldn't keep doing this to our families. But even as we said it, I could feel the pull, the connection that wasn't just going to disappear. Around the same time, something was happening in my marriage. My husband, who'd been distant and busy for so long, started changing. It was like he sensed he was losing me. He began making an effort, coming home earlier, trying to reconnect. It was sweet, in a way, but also heartbreaking. Where was this man when I needed him most? One evening, he sat me down and asked me point blank if I was happy. It wasn't an accusation, more like a genuine, concerned question. I didn't know what to say. The truth, a lie? I ended up saying something vague, but it hung in the air between us, this big, unsaid truth. I was at a crossroads. On one side, there was Mr. X, passion, excitement, something that felt like love. On the other, my husband, stability, history, my family. I knew I had to choose, but how do you choose when each option feels like losing something vital? The decision to end the affair wasn't easy. It came after a lot of tears, a lot of soul-searching. I met Mr. X for what we both knew would be the last time. It was emotional, saying goodbye to someone who'd become such a big part of my life. We didn't end it with anger or accusations, just a sad acceptance that this was the right thing to do. Walking away from that hotel room was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind. But I also knew it was time to face the music, to try and fix the life I'd nearly destroyed. Coming clean to my husband was the next step. I didn't tell him everything, just that I'd been unhappy, that I felt we'd drifted apart. It was a half-truth, but it was all I could give him. To my surprise, he listened. He really listened, and for the first time in a long time, we talked. Really talked. We decided to give our marriage another shot. It wasn't going to be easy, fixing something that had been broken for so long. But we both wanted to try, for us, for our kids. So, that's chapter 4. The affair ends, my marriage hangs by a thread, and I'm left trying to piece together the remnants of my life. It's not a happy ending, not yet. But it's a start, a chance to make things right. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. You ever have one of those moments where everything just feels broken? That was me, after ending things with Mr. X. It's like I was walking around in a daze, trying to figure out what comes next. Ending the affair was hard, but what came after was even harder. There I was, back in my real life, but it didn't feel real anymore. Everything was off, like I was living in someone else's story. My husband and I, we were trying, really trying. He was being so damn understanding, which almost made it worse. I kept waiting for him to yell, to blame me, to do something. But he just didn't. We went to couples therapy, started having date nights again, the whole deal. It was awkward, like we were two strangers learning to be together again. And then there were the nights. The long, lonely nights where I'd lie awake, missing Mr. X. I'd think about calling him, just to hear his voice, but I never did. I'd made my choice, and I had to stick to it. But man, it hurt. It hurt like hell. During the day, I was mom, the wife, the woman who had her life together. But inside, I was a mess. I felt like I'd lost a part of myself, a part one wasn't sure I could get back. My kids, bless them, they were my saving grace. They didn't know anything, of course. To them, mom was just mom. But they kept me grounded, kept me focused on the here and now. As for my husband, we were slowly getting back to something that resembled normal. It wasn't the same as before, couldn't be. Too much had changed, but we were talking, really talking, and that was something. One day, I ran into an old friend, someone I hadn't seen since before the affair. She commented on how happy I looked, how everything seemed to be going great for me. I just nodded and smiled, but inside, I was screaming. If only she knew. Reflecting on everything, I realized I'd been searching for something in Mr. X that I should have been searching for in myself. I wanted excitement, passion, something to break the monotony of my life. But I was looking in the wrong places. Ending the affair didn't magically fix everything. If anything, it opened up a whole new set of problems. But it also opened my eyes. I started seeing a therapist, just for me this time. It was hard, facing up to what I'd done, the choices I'd made. But it was necessary. Through therapy, I began to understand why I'd had the affair in the first place. It wasn't just about feeling lonely or neglected. It was about me, about how I saw myself, how I'd lost myself in the role of wife and mother. I started doing things just for me. I took up painting, something I'd always wanted to try. I started reading again, losing myself in stories that had nothing to do with my life. It was like I was finding pieces of myself I didn't even know were missing. My husband noticed the changes. He'd comment on my paintings, encourage me to take time for myself. It was weird, this new dynamic between us. But it was good, too. It felt like we were building something new, something stronger. As for Mr. X, I thought about him less and less as time went on. He'd always be a part of my story, a chapter I'd never forget. But that's all it was, a chapter, not the whole book. So, that's chapter 5. It's about ending, but it's also about beginning. Beginning to heal, to understand, to rebuild. It's not an easy chapter, but it's an important one. Because sometimes, you have to break everything down to start building it back up again. Life after an affair is like walking on a tightrope without a safety net. Every step is uncertain, every breath is a reminder of the fall you just took. But you keep walking because what else can you do? My husband and I, we were finding our way back to each other, but it was like learning to dance to a completely new tune. Sometimes we stepped on each other's toes, sometimes we moved in perfect harmony. But we were dancing again, and that mattered. There were moments, fleeting moments, when I saw glimpses of the man I fell in love with. And in those moments, I remembered why I chose to stay, why I chose to fight for our marriage. It wasn't just about the kids or the years we'd spent together. It was about us, about the life we'd built and the future we still could have. But the shadows of the affair lingered. There were times when I caught a certain look in my husband's eyes, a look that said he remembered, that he hadn't forgotten. And in those moments, I felt the weight of my choices, the impact of my actions. I had to learn to forgive myself, which was perhaps the hardest part of all. I'd made a mistake, a big one. But I was more than that mistake. I was a wife, a mother, a woman who'd lost her way but was finding it back. Slowly, the pieces of my life started falling back into place. Not the same picture as before, but maybe a better one. A picture with more honesty, more understanding, more of me in it. I won't say I don't think about Mr. X anymore. Sometimes, when I'm alone, my mind wanders back to him, to us. But it's not with longing or regret, it's more like remembering a dream that was beautiful and painful in equal measure. So here I am, at the end of this chapter, standing on firmer ground than before. My marriage isn't perfect, but it's real. My life isn't exciting, but it's mine. And me? I'm still learning, still growing, still healing. But I'm getting there, one step at a time. And that's the thing about life. It doesn't give you neat endings or simple solutions. It gives you messes, challenges, and the chance to find something beautiful in the chaos. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Finding beauty, finding peace. I had returned home from business trip earlier than planned, and I had the all too natural idea of surprising my husband with my return and with a nice dinner. I hid myself in the living room closet, trying not to laugh out loud with excitement from seeing him all surprised and happy to see me, when the front door finally opened and I could hear his voice. But then, I also heard a woman's voice that I didn't recognize, and in a few moments, I saw them come into the living room together, arm in arm. My husband was with another woman, a stranger to me. At that moment, I realized that everything was a lie, and what was going to be a surprise became revenge. I was never going to forgive him, and he was going to pay well for his actions. How could he betray me, his own wife? Prepare yourself, darling, for what might be your last few seconds of precious life. My name is Wendy, and I'm a 32-year-old office woman. After graduating from college, I got a job at a major company that manages gardening equipment, and since then, I've been working hard as a career woman with a potentially bright future ahead of her. Up until about a year ago, I only cared about my working life and my personal success as a working member of society, but a year ago, I met Landon, my future husband. We met through a mutual friend, who invited the two of us to a small drinking party at a nice tavern downtown, and he worked in another smaller company. We hit it off, and after 17 months of being a couple, we got married, and we lived a happy life together as a working couple. My husband works for a small business in agricultural machines, and he never works overtime, and I don't work overtime either, and I also came home earlier than he did, so whenever I did, I would often wait for him after I cooked something for dinner. It was hard to do housework after work, but my husband worked hard in a physically demanding job, and my determination to cheer up with a meal was pretty impressive, so I didn't really mind doing the housework. As long as Landon could rest at home, nice and peaceful, when he was tired, that was good enough for me. A part of me also wanted him to think that I was a good wife for him, so, in my own way, I was doing my best at home too. Then, one day, it was decided that I was going to go on a long-term business trip. This business trip was related to an impending promotion of mine, and I was very excited. I even thought that this business trip would decide the fate of my career, if not my life itself. But during the trip, Landon would be alone in the house. He's a grown man who can take care of himself like it was a walk in the park, so there wasn't any need to worry. But one thing you should know about my husband, he is a catastrophically poor cook, and he's never done a day's housework in his life. Up until we got married, he was living in his parents' home, and everything was taken by my mother-in-law, Mrs. Braths. Landon can't even do his own laundry, But, nowadays, in this advanced society, we have delivery service for meals, and there's a laundromat a short walk away from where we lived for laundry. I was sure he could manage. And while I was on my business trip, my husband was going to celebrate his 34th birthday. We used to spend his birthday together, but because of this stupid business trip, we couldn't spend it together this time. Landon, honey, we won't be able to celebrate your birthday together this year. I'm so sorry. Oh, Wendy, darling, it's okay. It can't be helped in this case. You have work to do. But good luck with your work, darling. I've always loved you because you always try to do your best. We'll do something to celebrate it again when you come back. How's that? That idea sounds awesome. Thanks so much. And I'm really sorry. I'll do my best as always. With some kind words from my husband, I got even more determined to do great, and I headed out on my business trip. While I was away, I was very busy. Work often lasted until after I usually went home. This made it difficult for me to find enough time to call my husband, or have a real-time conversation over text messages. I did call him every once in a while, and by that I mean a couple of days, but when I could reach him, perhaps he was busy at the moment because he never answered the phone. I couldn't get in touch with him other than messages, and it just wasn't the same. I missed him, but Landon had sent me off with his great words of encouragement, so I focused on working hard to land that big promotion. My hard work paid off in the end, because I finished a little bit early, and that meant that I could go home from my business trip a few days earlier than scheduled. I was so happy. I was able to come home on my husband's birthday, even though I told him I couldn't make it because of this business trip. I had the all too natural idea of surprising my husband with my return, and with a nice dinner on the day of his birthday. The plan was that I would leave work early on his birthday, and bring home Chinese food and a nice birthday cake for him, and the wallet he wanted as a present. I had it already. I could only imagine how happy he would be to see me back home on his birthday. Just envisioning the look of surprise and excitement he would surely have on his face made me so eager to hurry up and get home. I arrived home long before he always did. That night would probably be the same as always. He would be home by 6 p.m. To surprise him, I hid in the living room closet. But even after 6 p.m., he still wasn't home. I wondered if it might be because he was celebrating his birthday with a bunch of his colleagues, and as I slowly began to be convinced that's what he was doing, I felt grateful for his friends. But I still wanted to see the look of surprise and excitement on Landon's face. So I didn't call it a night, even when it was after 6:30 p.m. I remained in the closet and waited for the familiar hum of his car. I was pretty tired from my long and tedious business trip where I spent an ungodly amount of time in front of papers and computer screens, and before I knew it, I was fast asleep. I only realized I was when I woke up a few hours later from the sound of a rumbling car engine. I opened the closet door slightly, and through the window, I saw the signal lights of the car scintilling. My husband had come home at last. I quietly closed the closet door and waited for him for another few minutes. I heard the front door open, and the familiar sound of Landon's business shoes echoed through the house. I had a good time today. Thank you for the delicious dinner. It was delicious, wasn't it? It was nice to spend your birthday with you, sweetie. Why in the goddamn world of ignorant bliss did I hear a woman's voice? One that I didn't recognize, in any case. And that sounded suspiciously young. I was so upset, but I tried not to make a sound in the closet. Seriously, I can't believe how happy a simple business trip could make me. I feel like every day I get to spend with you, Clara. I'm undoubtedly the happiest man in the world. It's actually insane how great I feel right now. Thank you, sweetie. I love spending time with you too. I can't help but feel sorry for your wife, but I always tell myself that it can't be helped. It's okay, darling. I'm only married to her for her money. You're the only woman I've ever loved. Am I really? Are you seriously only married to her because she's got bags of money stashed away? I know it'd be so hard for me when I discover my own loving husband says things like that about me. There's nothing good about her except for her money, literally the only thing she has going for her. And they got ridiculously excited as they piled on the bad things about me. I was shell-shocked, but unknowing of my presence in the room, they went on talking shit about me, laughing all the while. I always have an amazing time with you, Clara, but if I imagine that I only had a relationship with that hag, it's like suffocating me. It's a real nightmare. Then you're lucky I'm here. I'll say this again. I never loved Wendy. I love you so much, and I'm going to do what we can to be together, okay? Then they went to take a bath. I took advantage of the opportunity and left the house quietly. Maybe the better option would have been to interrogate the two slimy traitors right then and there, but the shock at what I'd witnessed was just too overwhelming. It was extremely difficult to prevent myself from hyperventilating and screaming in sorrow. I couldn't face the reality just yet. I needed time to gather my senses first. I booked a hotel room nearby and stayed there that night. As I was trudging towards the hotel, my emotions got the better of me, and I suddenly started to cry. I sat down on a bench in a small park, ripped open the box that contained Lana's birthday cake, forced my fingers around a large clump of dessert, and stuffed it in my mouth. The cream tasted very sweet, and somehow my tears, which were streaming into my mouth at this point, added a nice little tang at the beginning of each bite. From the point of view of passerbys, I was basically a woman dressed in office uniform, stuffing a ridiculous amount of birthday cake into my mouth, crying all the while, and getting cream in every nook and cranny of my face. I definitely looked a suspicious person, but during that time of personal crisis, what people thought of me was the least of my problems, and I couldn't care less. After crying a legitimate rainstorm, my sadness towards the situation gradually transformed into anger towards my husband. I don't mean to say that he owes me something, but no one can deny I've done so much for him. I cooked for him, did the housework for him, all because he couldn't do shit around the house, and when he told me there was something he wanted, I went and actually something nice for him. I got him a birthday present that cost thousands of dollars, and he was still willing to cast me aside as an ATM machine and never accept me as the one he chose to spend the rest of his life with. Call me a money grubber, will you? Well, that doesn't come for free, my dearest. I threw the wallet I'd bought for his birthday as hard as I could into a nearby trash can. You've got some nerve to cheat on your wife while she's away on a business trip, my dearest, I muttered to myself as I left the park. On the way to the hotel, I decided to get a divorce, but I knew he would only be pleased if I divorced my husband. I decided to really make him suffer for his crimes before divorcing him. For a while thereafter, I continued to stay at the hotel. I was supposed to go back home next week, so until then, I can't go home. But I did actually stop by my house on the way, and the fact that I found Landon's car was strange, very strange indeed. At this time of night, he's supposed to be at work still. I called his company posing as a client, and asked the receptionist at the other end of the phone, "Excuse me, is Mr. Landon Brass present at this hour?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems Mr. Brass has taken a vacation for about a week." "Oh, is that so? Thank you for telling me." So my husband is on vacation for a week. That led me to wonder if the woman whom he was having an affair with worked for the same company. I checked. "Well then, is there someone by the name of Clara?" "I'm so sorry, ma'am, it seems Miss McIntyre is also on vacation for about a week." "Is there anything you need to inform us about? If it's urgent, I can put someone else on the phone to assist you." "No, it's not urgent. Thank you so much. Have a nice day, sir." After I said that, I hung up. I found out that my husband was having an affair with one of his coworkers. I was so sick of his stupid bullshit I wanted to throw up. I couldn't comprehend the fact that I used to love Landon Brass. Now, I feel nothing but contempt, disgust, and fury. I stayed out of the house for a while, checking on them both from a distance. After perhaps an hour or so, I saw them having inappropriate physical contact as they exited the house. They got into Landon's car and drove off somewhere. They were each carrying a large suitcase, so naturally, I assumed the two snakes were going on a trip, taking an entire week off from work just to go on a vacation of adultery. What a couple of carefree jellyfishes. I made sure my husband was out of the house completely before I went inside. I decided to take all of my valuables and all the things I needed and leave the house, never to return to live again. After I was sure I had packed everything, I made one last check of the house, which was in fact a kind of formal goodbye to the building. I loved that house. It was perfect for both of us to have a nice and peaceful time to rest after a hard day's work, and the backyard was absolutely beautiful. Landon and I were going to build a life together, and the first step was buying this house with most of what we'd saved up. It was not a new house by any means, but considering the fact that I was going to live in it with the person I loved, it was the best house I could have asked for. But now, I was living in it with a traitor, and I didn't feel comfortable at all. My biggest desire was to leave that house as quickly as I could, but my old love for this house made me linger for another few minutes. I took a walk around the inside. I discovered a lot of the woman's belongings, Clara's belongings. I became positive that while I was away on my business trip, they were indeed planning on living together in their cheesy, unfaithful excuse of passion. Assorted lotions, shampoos, conditioners, and items of makeup that weren't mine lined the nightstand in Landon's bedroom. His closet lodged her clothes, anything ranging from casual jeans and sweaters, to beautiful dresses, to inappropriately tiny blouses. The room had a fruity smell to it, and I later found out why. Landon's old bedsheets, which were now nowhere to be found, had been thrown away, probably, and replaced with new, orange-scented ones. When I saw all this, I was beyond angry. I was utterly mortified. I wondered what all the time we had spent meant exactly. Which had we been trying to build up the whole time? I left the house, and first went straight to a trusted lawyer, who helped me prepare for the divorce, and then I went to a detective agency to gather evidence against the affair. When I went to the house the second time, I probably should have taken pictures of the evidence, but I felt like if I took pictures with my phone, the scene would burn itself into my mind in the worst way possible, and I didn't like it. Additionally, I couldn't stay in the hotel forever, so I rented an apartment that could accommodate a tenant for a month at a time. That's where I put all the stuff I had packed and taken away with me when I left the house. I had to find a new, bigger, better place to live. By this time, I had already made up my mind on getting a divorce, and nothing was going to change my mind. I no longer had any love for Landon Brass, and he was dead to me, but something told me it wasn't enough. Of all the pain he had caused me, I have to pay him back with pain tenfold. Otherwise, my gut would never be satisfied, nor would it ever forgive me for backing out. As I went about my work as usual, I waited for a call from the detective agency, and I got a phone call from at what was quite possibly the best time ever. They said they had accumulated enough evidence, which was excellent news. I asked them to keep that evidence in a secure place while I went back to my husband's house. There was a car parked outside, so I knew he must have returned from his trip of adultery. After I confirmed he was inside the house, I headed to the cake shop and bought a cake before I went back to my husband's house. I unlocked the door, and I quietly entered the building. I made sure he was not in the living room, and then proceeded to approach his bedroom door. As I got ever closer, I could hear my husband and the woman known as Clara McIntyre, whom he was having an affair with, inside. I held up the box that contained the cake, opened it up quietly, took out the dessert, set the box aside in the corridor, and burst into the room. "Happy birthday to you! Happy birthday to you!" My voice startled them both, and their faces expressed the purest shock I'd ever seen. It was priceless, and I wanted to laugh, but keeping a straight face here and going through with the plan was key. Ignoring their ridiculous faces, I kept on singing. "Happy birthday, dear traitor, happy birthday to you." Once I finished singing, I threw the entire cake at my husband as hard and as accurately as I could. The dessert landed with a satisfying splat all over his naked upper body, and some of the cream flew into the naked woman as well. Hey! What the frick are you doing, Wendy? What the frick am I doing? Well, look who's talking. And what do you think you're doing, eh? Well, I mean... Wait, I didn't know you were home already. Why the hell didn't you call me? Why didn't I call you? Listen, buddy, I'm about to clue you in on the truth here. I was already here on your birthday. I hope I didn't say anything more to help you understand. Oh my God, there's no way. My husband's mouth started to spasm, and his darling lover must have been more speechless than he. Her mouth gaped open and gave me the impression she physically couldn't get it shut. I think you just stole my frickin' line, Mr. Brass. There's no way I'm seeing any of this right now. Could you explain to what exactly it is you're doing? Well, this is, What does you know about this place, madam? This is my house, you know. Well. Perhaps my sudden intrusion really did the job to leave them catatonic. They were visibly upset, and they were not answering any of my questions. I'm only a money grubber, after all, and this lady is the only one you love, right? Well, I have just the remedy for that. From now on, you will pay me back all the money that you stole from me. I'm going to demand alimony from you, and you better pay me back every single penny you owe me. No sooner had I uttered the word alimony than my husband gasped, and then I looked at the woman whom he was having an affair with. She was shaking. Well, don't just stay there where you are, in that uncomfortable position. Get down on the floor, on your knees. I'm sure you'll feel a lot better that way. The moment I told her so, they both rushed off the bed, kneeled before me, and bowed their heads towards the floor. I'm sorry, I was having a little bit of fun with her. Since you were away working, I missed you, and the loneliness was getting to me. Yes, that's all true. I have a husband myself, but he never pays any attention to me, and I was in desperate need of someone who appreciated my company. Exactly, and we were actually talking about ending things right when you barged in, Wendy. We were just saying goodbye to each other. Yes, we were. We both agreed it wasn't good for the ones we chose to marry originally. We literally just broke up, Wendy. Cheaters, liars, backstabbing traitors. I'm pretty sure all of these things describe the same two people. Let's see who can guess the right answer. I heard you two outside earlier, loud and clear. Bullshit, you were talking about ending things. What you were really talking about was taking a 2-week trip to Japan next. You've got to be kidding me. How do two people stoop to such low humanity, damn it? That's what I said, and both he and the woman went deathly pale, indicating I hit the nail on the head. You guys are such assholes. I already mentioned I heard you guys talking shit about me the night of this bastard's birthday. With me having this much knowledge about what you think about my frickin' existence, you really think I'm gonna whatever horseshit excuse your bird brains come up with? I'm sorry. I admit that I cheated on you, and I deeply apologize. I hope you can forgive me. Just because you act all responsible and innocent right now, doesn't mean you're any closer to being forgiven. I'm sorry, I really am. I really do believe that what I did was wrong. Divorce me. Now. Please, please don't say such things, Wendy. Really, it was just for fun. Ma'am, on behalf of Landon, I'm begging you, don't divorce him. Please. The name's Clara, right? Who are you to talk to on behalf of Landon Brass? Don't you dare forget that you're eligible for paying me alimony too, eh? But, I was just having an affair. It's not like we were married, Landon and I. I don't think the law states that you can demand alimony from me because it was just fun and games. I don't believe this. Tell me what exactly is your IQ score? I'm just dying to know. Of course I can legally demand alimony from you. You knew the man whom you were with was married to another woman, and yet you went on with the affair, hoping to get something nice out of it. Newsflash, lady. Nothing nice comes out of unfaithfulness. I was so stunned that this woman was pretty much claiming that the sun was basically the world's largest pizza in the entire state of Mexico. I couldn't believe I'd lost my actual husband to a woman with zero common sense. I want a divorce. I've already hired a lawyer, so if you want to know more about the demands, you'll hear about it from him. I've also been to the detective agency, and they acquired a lot of solid evidence of your stupid affair. If you're thinking of uttering excuses to get yourself out of this, don't freaking bother. It doesn't make any sense, for one thing. And second, you'd be digging your own grave. You can't be serious. I don't want a divorce. I don't want a divorce. You even said you didn't want to talk to me. Being around me was enough to get you disgusted enough to want to run the frick away from this place. I don't know how you expect us to live with ourselves as a married couple, now that the relationship is ruined. Oh wait, of course. I'm the money grubber, so you literally need me in order to survive, right? No, that's not it. Oh darling, it's a shame. Because this year, I actually got you that luxury brand wallet you've been wanting for quite some time. I had it ready for you. And I was gonna give it to you. Now, it's in the trash. No, there's no way. Maybe you should have stayed true to yourself. Goodbye. That's all I had to say, and I left them with their grief and shame, alone in the house. Thereafter, Mr. Brass tried calling me a few times, but I ignored them all. I left everything to my lawyer. Mr. Brass was later fired from his job. Perhaps the fact that I went to the company where he and the woman whom he was having an affair with worked, and gave them an official letter from the detective agency that contained the evidence of their adultery. Nowadays, it isn't uncommon anymore to hear about people that cheated on their husbands or wives, and it's pretty much common knowledge right now that anyone who does engage in such crimes against humanity will lose credibility in the company, and in life in general. How in the world did Mr. Brass and Miss McIntyre not know anything about that? Mr. Brass was so dependent on me for living expenses, so I wouldn't be surprised if he never saved a penny. Now that he was fired, he pleaded to me through my lawyer to let him pay the alimony and monthly installments. I agreed, as long as he paid me in full. As for Miss McIntyre, she was fired from her job and was left without any money. Mr. McIntyre found out about the affair. I believe he's also demanding alimony. She tried to turn to Mr. Brass for help, but found no luck with him, as he didn't have any savings whatsoever and was now working part-time. She decided she couldn't rely on him, and thus she betrayed him and replaced him with a man who seemed to be loaded with money. But that man turned out to be quite formidable because he didn't even work, and even though he's neck-deep in debt, he never failed to waste his money on stupid things like gambling and marijuana. Knowing that neither Mr. Brass nor Miss McIntyre are living happy lives after their affair was exposed makes me feel somewhat relieved. The irony is that now I know full well it's not good to take pleasure in other people's unhappiness. I got a big promotion after that long business trip I took, and I was praised as the first woman in the company's history to be promoted to that position at such a young age, 32. There are junior staff who admire me because of this achievement and makes me subconsciously put more time and effort into my work. It's a very good thing I love my work, and now I've set myself a new challenge. To be a good boss who sets a good example for my subordinates, to be a trusted employee of the company and contribute to bringing it to greatness, and to acquire what is needed to be promoted even further up in the ranks of the enterprise. Wish me luck. I never thought I'd be the girl to say this, but here I am, heart shattered, trust broken. It's funny, isn't it? How one moment can turn your entire world upside down. That moment for me? Finding those videos. God, even thinking about it makes my stomach twist. I was at Laura's, my supposed best friend since forever, celebrating her brother's 22nd birthday. The house was buzzing with people, laughter echoing off the walls, drinks flowing like there was no tomorrow. And me? I was floating through it all, tipsy and carefree, until I wasn't. Laura had disappeared outside, mingling or whatever, and I decided it was selfie time. Her phone was lying around, and we always shared everything, so I didn't even hesitate. A few goofy shots later, I had this brilliant idea to send them to myself, for memories. That's when everything changed. Typing in my name, I paused. Ethan's name popped up just below mine. Why? Why would my boyfriend and my best friend be texting? Curiosity morphed into suspicion, morphed into action. I clicked on his name, my heart racing, and that's when I saw them. 4 videos, thumbnails glaring back at me with a story I wasn't prepared to read. The first video was enough to burn every memory of us to ashes. Ethan, blindfolded, and Laura, very much not, in a way that screamed betrayal. They were intimate, to put it mildly. Each video escalated, their actions a stark contrast to the love and trust one thought we shared. I felt like I was outside my body, watching someone else's life implode. The room spun, my heart pounded, and I had to get out. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I left the party without a word to anyone, especially not Laura. Ethan's been calling, voicemails piling up with him crying, begging for a chance to explain. But what's there to explain? The videos spoke volumes, volumes of lies and deceit. And Laura? She's been radio silent. Guilt, maybe? Or just indifference? Hard to tell with a backstabber. Now, I'm here, sitting in my room, replaying that night over and over. The betrayal by the 2 people I trusted most has left me reeling, unsure of how to move forward or if I even want to confront them. Part of me wants to scream, to make them feel a fraction of this pain, but another part wonders if silence is the best revenge. What do you do when your world crumbles? When the 2 people you loved and trusted the most leave you questioning everything? I guess I'm about to find out. The night was supposed to be simple. Can you give Laura a ride home? I asked Ethan, my voice muffled by the phone and the sounds of the bustling cafe where I worked. It was just a favor, nothing more. Ethan, always the charmer, agreed without a second thought. Of course, babe, no problem at all, he assured me, his voice a smooth balm to my frazzled nerves. Little did I know, that ride would mark the beginning of the end. I was pulling an all-nighter at the cafe, the kind of shift that leaves you questioning your life choices. Meanwhile, Laura was out, living it up at a graduation party. She'd been my rock since we were kids, but that night, she became something else entirely. When I finally got a break, my phone lit up with a message from Ethan. Lara's home safe. Heading back to our place now. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by exhaustion. I trusted Ethan implicitly, and Laura was like the sister I never had. It never crossed my mind to doubt either of them. But then, things started to shift. Lara's texts became more frequent, her questions about Ethan more pointed. How's Ethan doing? He's such a sweetheart for giving me a ride. Her words, innocent on the surface, began to carry a weight that I couldn't shake off. And Ethan? He just laughed it off, his usual easygoing self, oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. The first seeds of doubt were planted the next time we all hung out together. Laura, who was always more jeans and a t-shirt than anything else, showed up in a dress that left little to the imagination. She clung to Ethan's every word, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, her eyes lingering on him a little too long. It was subtle but undeniable. Something had shifted in the dynamics of our trio, and I found myself on the outside looking in. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself that I was reading too much into it. After all, they were just being friendly, right? But the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach wouldn't go away. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know what's coming, but you're powerless to stop it. Ethan? I found myself asking one night, the words slipping out before I could think better of it, is everything okay with you and Laura? His response was immediate, a perfect blend of confusion and concern. Of course, babe, why wouldn't it be? He pulled me close, his embrace meant to reassure, but the seeds of doubt had already taken root, growing with every passing day. As I lay in his arms that night, the silence between us spoke volumes. The affair might not have been out in the open yet, but the foundation of trust we'd built was starting to crumble. And with each passing moment, I felt myself slipping further away from the two people I loved most, caught in a web of betrayal that I never saw coming. The moment I thought about confronting them, my heart raced like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. The idea alone felt like stepping off a cliff. Ethan and Laura, the two pillars of my world, suddenly seemed like strangers. Am I just being paranoid? I whispered to the empty room, half hoping for an answer that never came. Ethan's behavior didn't help, if anything, it only tangled my thoughts further. He was the same loving, attentive boyfriend he'd always been, maybe even more so. Flowers, just because. Surprise dinners, his warmth enveloping me in a way that almost made me forget the storm clouds gathering in my mind. Everything okay, Mia, his voice, laced with genuine concern, would pull me back from the edge every time I neared it. You've seemed a bit off lately. How could I tell him what was swirling in my head? That every laugh shared with Laura felt like a knife twisting in my back? And Laura, God, Laura. She crossed lines I didn't even know we had, her questions about Ethan veering from curious to invasive. How did Ethan react to that story you told him? He's got such a great laugh. Comments that once would have seemed innocuous now felt loaded, each one chipping away at my resolve. Their closeness was no longer a figment of my imagination. The way she sought him out, the energy between them, it was palpable, undeniable. Yet every time I steeled myself to confront them, to demand answers, I'd falter. Fear of shattering the fragile peace held me back, the peace that, deep down, I knew was already fractured. The tension became a constant companion, whispering doubts in my ear, painting my thoughts with suspicion. Mia, you're just overthinking things, I'd tell myself, trying to brush away the unease that clung to me like a second skin. But the harder I tried to ignore it, the louder it became. One evening, as I watched Ethan and Laura laughing together over something trivial, something inside me snapped. The laughter wasn't for me. I was on the outside looking in on a connection that had somehow shifted away from our trio, excluding me, isolating me. I needed to talk to someone, anyone who could offer perspective without the emotional turmoil clouding my judgment. My mom, always my sounding board, answered on the first ring. Honey, what's wrong? She asked, her voice a soothing balm. Pouring out my fears and observations felt like releasing a valve, the pressure within easing slightly as I spoke. Mia, listen to me, she said, her tone firm yet gentle. Trust your gut. But remember, accusations need solid ground. Observe, reflect, and then act. Don't let fear make decisions for you. Her words, wise as always, gave me pause. Was I ready to face the potential truth, or was the comfort of ignorance easier to bear? The answer, much like my heart at that moment, was fragmented. As days turned into weeks, the dance continued. Ethan's affection became my anchor, Lara's boldness the storm that threatened to pull me under. The confrontation loomed large, an inevitable crossroads I wasn't sure I had the strength to face. Yet, in the silence of the night, with only my thoughts for company, I realized something had to give. The truth, no matter how painful, was better than the limbo of doubt. I resolved to find my moment, to confront the storm head-on. Little did I know, the eye of that storm was closer than I ever imagined. The air was thick with celebration. Laughter weaving through the crowded backyard as I navigated my way through familiar faces, all gathered for Lara's brother's birthday bash. It was one of those nights where everything felt just right, or so I thought. Little did I know, my world was about to come crashing down in the most unexpected way. I remember feeling light, almost giddy, as I made my way inside Lara's house to escape the chill. The warmth of the interior hit me, a welcome embrace from the crisp night air. That's when I spotted Lara's phone, casually left on the kitchen counter among a clutter of party debris. A harmless idea struck me: why not take a few drunken selfies for laughs? We did it all the time, a silly tradition that never seemed to grow old. Flicking through the camera roll to find my latest series of goofy faces, I noticed the messaging app open in the background. An innocent glance turned into a curious peek, and that's when I saw Ethan's name, popping up in a way it had no right to. My heartbeat accelerated, a mix of confusion and a creeping dread taking hold as I tapped on his name, driven by a force I couldn't resist. The screen loaded, and suddenly, I wasn't in Lara's kitchen anymore. I was somewhere far off, a place where trust and love went to die. Videos, 4 of them, each a knife twisting deeper into my heart. My fingers trembled as I pressed play, each second unraveling the life I thought I knew. The first video was a blow I couldn't have prepared for. Ethan, my Ethan, with Lara in a way he was only supposed to be with me. Blindfolded, vulnerable, and completely unaware I would ever witness this. Their laughter, touches, the intimacy of their betrayal, it was all there, laid bare for my disbelieving eyes. I watched, frozen, as each video descended further into a nightmare. There they were, the two people I trusted most in the world, sharing moments meant for us, for me and Ethan. The realization hit me like a physical force, tears blurring my vision as the final video ended. The room spun around me, the sounds of the party outside a distant, mocking echo. I felt sick, heartbroken, and utterly betrayed. How? Why? Questions spiraled through my mind, but deep down, I knew the answers wouldn't change the raw, aching wound inside. I left the phone where it lay, a Pandora's box of shattered illusions. The urge to confront them, to scream and demand explanations, surged within me. Yet, my feet carried me away, out of Lara's house, away from the scene of my world's quiet collapse. The night air no longer felt crisp, it was cold, a chill that matched the sudden ice in my veins. As I walked, the images played on a loop in my mind, a cruel highlight reel of betrayal. Ethan's and Lara's laughter echoed in my ears, a soundtrack to the unraveling of my trust. I knew then, nothing would ever be the same. The unexpected twist in my story wasn't just a revelation, it was a turning point, a moment that redefined everything I thought I knew about love, friendship, and trust. The moment I stepped out of Lara's house, the cool night air felt like a slap to my face, a harsh contrast to the storm of emotions raging inside me. My phone buzzed incessantly, a relentless reminder of the reality I was desperately trying to escape. It was Ethan, of course. His name lit up my screen over and over, each call a stab of betrayal. I didn't need to hear his voice to know what he would say. The apologies, the explanations, the desperate pleas for understanding, they were all meaningless. How could words undo what I had seen? How could they stitch back together the trust that had been so carelessly ripped apart? I took a deep breath, the decision crystallizing in my mind with a cold, hard finality. Blocking them was almost cathartic, each button press a step towards severing the ties that bound me to the pain. Ethan, Lara, they were parts of my life that I needed to cut out, malignant growths that had hidden their toxicity until now. The walk home was a blur, my thoughts a tangled mess of anger, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of loss. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was flooded with voicemails from Ethan. Part of me, a very small part, wanted to listen, to let his words wash over me in a wave of self-torture. But I resisted, there was nothing he could say that would change the images burned into my memory. Ethan again, I muttered to myself, deleting another voicemail unheard. His desperation was palpable, even through the digital distance I had put between us. Mia, please, just let me explain. It's not what it looks like. I swear to you, I didn't know she was filming. Please, babe, we need to talk about this. His words, even unheard, were like echoes in my mind. Could it be true? Did it even matter? The betrayal wasn't just in the act caught on camera, it was in the lies, the secrecy, and the fact that it happened at all. The apartment felt empty, colder somehow, as if the shadows held whispers of the love and trust that had once filled its corners. I sank onto the couch, the silence oppressive, the solitude a stark reminder of the gaping hole Ethan and Lara's actions had torn in my life. In that moment, the urge to confront Ethan, to scream and cry and make him understand the depth of the pain he had caused, was overwhelming. But what would it achieve? The damage was done, the trust shattered beyond repair. No, this was a wound that words could not heal. The night dragged on, each tick of the clock a reminder of the agonizing limbo I found myself in. To confront or to retreat, to seek answers or to accept the painful truth without them. These were questions I couldn't answer, not yet. For now, the only thing I could do was navigate the immediate aftermath of the betrayal, one agonizing step at a time. As dawn crept through the curtains, casting a soft light on the remnants of a life I thought I knew, I realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with pain and the daunting task of rebuilding myself from the ashes of my shattered trust. But it was a road I would have to walk, one way or another. The second the idea took root, it was like a wildfire in my veins, consuming the remnants of the hurt and betrayal with a fierce, unyielding intensity. I wasn't going to let them get away with it, not without facing the consequences of their actions. Direct confrontation? No. That would be too easy, too quick. They deserved more. They deserved to feel a fraction of the pain they'd inflicted on me. I spent the night plotting, my mind racing with possibilities until it clicked, the perfect form of revenge. Exposing them, letting everyone see them for who they really were, felt like the only way to strip them of the facade they'd so carefully constructed. The videos were damning evidence, impossible to deny or explain away. I worked methodically, my actions fueled by a cold, detached resolve. Creating anonymous email accounts felt like donning a mask, a necessary shield to hide behind as I prepared to unleash the storm. The videos, once a source of unimaginable pain, were now my weapons, and I wielded them with a precision that surprised even myself. The emails were crafted with care, each word a calculated strike meant to maximize the impact. To Ethan's family, to Lara's, to our friends who'd unknowingly been complicit in their secret, no one was spared. The send button was pressed not once, but several times, each click a step towards my liberation from the agony they'd cause. I imagined the fallout, the shock and horror that would ripple through our circle as the truth came to light. There would be no place for them to hide, no shadows deep enough to conceal the depth of their betrayal. Ethan and Lara, exposed for all to see, their perfect images shattered beyond repair. As the reality of what I'd done began to sink in, a twisted satisfaction took hold. It wasn't joy, far from it, but it was a start, a small flicker of power in the vast darkness they'd left me in. I waited, the silence of the early hours a stark contrast to the chaos I knew was unfolding in the digital realm. My phone remained silent, a testament to the anonymity of my revenge. Yet, I could almost hear the whispers, the shocked gasps, and the inevitable fallout. Ethan and Lara, once inseparable, would now be united in disgrace, their betrayal laid bare for all to see. This wasn't forgiveness, nor was it a path to healing. But in that moment, it was enough. Enough to give me a sense of control, a brief respite from the crushing weight of my shattered trust. As dawn broke, casting a soft light on the remnants of my old life, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. But maybe, just maybe, I could start to rebuild, piece by fragile piece, in the aftermath of the storm I'd unleashed. The silence of the morning after was deafening, each tick of the clock a heavy, echoing reminder of the storm I had unleashed. The night before, my fingers had danced across my phone with a single-minded purpose, sending those videos into the digital ether. It was a calculated move, cold and precise, aimed at exposing the betrayal that had torn my world apart. Now, as dawn broke, the reality of what I had done began to settle in, heavy and inescapable. My phone buzzed relentlessly, a constant barrage of messages and notifications. The digital world was ablaze with the scandal I had ignited. Ethan and Lara, once pillars of my life, were now the epicenter of a social earthquake, their reputations crumbling under the weight of their actions. I had envisioned this moment, played it over in my mind as a scene of triumphant justice. But as I scrolled through the messages, the expected surge of satisfaction eluded me. Instead, a hollow emptiness gnawed at my insides, a realization that no amount of revenge could undo the pain or fill the void left by their betrayal. The opportunity for confrontation came unexpectedly, at a gathering of mutual friends. The room was thick with tension, whispers darting through the air like arrows, each glance heavy with unspoken words. Ethan and Laura stood together, isolated, their eyes searching the room until they found mine. The moment was charged, a crackling anticipation of the inevitable clash. Ethan stepped forward, his face a mask of regret. "Mia, please, can we talk?" His voice was low, tinged with a desperation that might have once moved me. Laura stood by his side, her eyes downcast, a silent plea hanging between us. The words I had rehearsed for so long suddenly felt hollow. "There's nothing left to say," I responded, my voice steady but devoid of warmth. "You both made your choices, and now you have to live with them." The finality in my tone left no room for arguments or excuses. Turning my back on them, I walked away, leaving their apologies unacknowledged. It was a moment of closure, but not the kind I had imagined. There was no sense of victory, no triumphant exit. Just a deep, aching sadness for what had been lost. In the days that followed, the fallout from the public exposure was impossible to ignore. Ethan's friendships deteriorated, his social circle shrinking as the reality of his actions set in. Laura faced a similar fate, her once vibrant presence now a shadow, tainted by the choices she had made. As I watched from a distance, the consequences of my revenge unfolding, a bitter truth settled in my heart. The destruction of their social lives, the isolation they faced, it didn't bring me peace. Instead, it served as a constant reminder of the betrayal, a wound that refused to heal. In the quiet moments, when the noise of the world faded into the background, I was forced to confront the scars that the betrayal had left on my soul. Trust, once given so freely, now felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. The walls I had built around my heart were higher, stronger, a fortress to protect me from the pain of betrayal. The journey from love to betrayal, from betrayal to revenge, had brought me to this place, a place of reflection, where the cost of my actions lay bare before me. Despite the successful revenge, satisfaction remained an elusive shadow, a reminder that some wounds run too deep to be healed by retribution alone. In the end, the downfall of Ethan and Laura was not a story of victory. It was a tale of loss, a cautionary reminder of the fragility of trust and the price of vengeance. As I moved forward, the lessons of this chapter etched deep in my heart. I knew the road to healing would be long and uncertain. But it was a road I was ready to walk, one step at a time, in search of a peace that revenge could never bring. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room, illuminating a new chapter in my life. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions, a tumultuous journey through betrayal, pain, and ultimately, growth. As I sat at my desk, surrounded by textbooks and notes, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. My studies and part-time job had become my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in routine and responsibility, away from the chaos that had once consumed my life. Each day was a step forward, a testament to my resilience. I had learned to guard my heart, to see the red flags I had once so naively ignored. It was a cautious dance, one where I was constantly aware of the shadows of my past. Ethan's attempts to reach out had been a steady background noise, a reminder of the life I had left behind. His messages, filled with regret and pleas for forgiveness, went unanswered. It wasn't out of spite, but rather a necessary step towards healing. I had moved on, leaving him to grapple with the consequences of his actions. It was a chapter closed, a lesson learned. Laura's fate was a mirror to the consequences of betrayal. The vibrant, carefree friend I once knew had become a shadow of her former self, isolated by the very actions she thought she could hide. The backlash was swift, a social exile that left her grappling with guilt and loneliness. It pained me to see her fall so far, but it was a path she had chosen, a stark reminder of the fragile nature of trust. Despite the scars, the pain had carved a path to new beginnings. My world, once so narrowly focused on Ethan and Lara, had gradually expanded, welcoming new faces, new friendships. It was a cautious process, each new connection forged with a wisdom born from betrayal. Trust was no longer given freely, it was earned, a precious commodity that I guarded with vigilance. The final lesson, the silver lining in the stormy clouds of my past, was a profound understanding of my worth. Betrayal, while a bitter pill to swallow, had taught me the value of self-respect, the importance of setting boundaries, and the necessity of walking away from those who no longer served my best interests. It was a painful journey, but one that had ultimately led me to a place of strength and empowerment. As I turned my attention back to my studies, the noise of the world outside fading into a distant hum, I realized that the betrayal, though a defining moment, was no longer the anchor it had once been. It was a part of my story, but not the entirety of it. I had emerged from the darkness, not unscathed, but stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with its own challenges and triumphs, but I faced it with a newfound confidence. The lessons of the past, while hard-earned, had equipped me with the tools to navigate the complexities of life with grace and determination. Betrayal had broken me, but in its wake, I had discovered an unshakable sense of self, a compass by which to steer my future. And so, with a deep breath, I embraced the day, ready for whatever lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that I was no longer the person I had once been. I was stronger, wiser, and infinitely more capable of facing the world on my own terms. The final lesson had been learned, and with it, a new chapter